When you turn on the tap, what do you really think about? Probably not much, right? For most of us here in Canada, fresh, clean water is just there. It's a given. But maybe we take it for granted. Today, we're going to dive deep into Canada's relationship with water and ask that big question. Is fresh water our most important resource?
And that question immediately leads to another one. I mean, think about it. You've got cities, farmers, huge companies, and nature itself all depending on the very same water. So who gets to call the shots? Who decides who gets what and how much? And believe me, this isn't just a thought experiment. It's a real conflict happening in our own backyards. To really see what this looks like on the ground, let's head to a small town in southern Ontario. It's a fascinating story about a massive global company, a determined local community, and the precious groundwater that connects them both.
And here it is. This is the battleground, so to speak. We're looking at an area near Hillsborough, Ontario, which is the headwaters for two really important rivers, the Grand and the Credit. This is also where Nestlé has a permit to pump up to 1.1 million liters of water every single day for its bottled water business.
So, what happens when a drought hits? That's the million-dollar question. Back in 2011, the government added a rule. During a drought, Nestlé had to cut back on pumping. But Nestlé appealed. They argued it wasn't fair because everyone else, farmers, residents, were only being asked to cut back voluntarily. Eventually, a deal was struck to drop that mandatory rule. But the story doesn't end there. Local citizens groups fought back, taking the whole thing to court. They wanted to make a point that nobody should have an unlimited right to take water when the entire ecosystem is stressed out.
But what if water isn't just a product? Something to be bought and sold. For many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, water is something much, much deeper. It's spiritual. This incredible line from a Mattawa/North Bay Algonquin First Nation poem, it sees rivers as the veins and arteries of Mother Earth. It's about life, purity, connection. It's a world away from a purely commercial view of water, isn't it?
That conflict in Ontario, it's like a small-scale version of a huge global challenge. To really get our heads around Canada's role in all this, we need to zoom out, way out, and take a look at the world's water account.
Okay, so let's think about the planet's water system like it's a giant bank. It's got two main parts. First, you have stores. These are like the savings accounts where water is kept. Oceans, ice caps, groundwater. Then you have flows, which are like the transactions. Precipitation is a deposit. Evaporation is a withdrawal. Simple as that. Now check this out. This is where it gets kind of crazy. Look at that first chart. 97% of all the water on Earth is salt water in the oceans. Only a tiny 3% is fresh. Now look at the second chart, which is just that tiny slice of fresh water. Almost 70% of that is frozen solid in ice and snow. Most of what's left is way underground. The amount in the lakes and rivers that we actually use? It's a fraction of a percent of all water on Earth. It's incredibly rare.
So how do geographers figure out how much water a place really has? Well, they use this clever tool called the aridity index. It sounds complicated, but it's not. It's basically just a ratio. It compares the water supply, that's rain and snow, to the natural demand from the environment, which is a fancy term called potential evapotranspiration. It's really just supply versus demand. And when you put that index on a map of the world, you get this. The deep red areas are hyper-arid, think the Sahara Desert. Super dry, not many people can live there. The green spots are non-arid, where there's plenty of water. But the real story is in the orange and yellow zones. These are the arid and semi-arid regions where hundreds of millions of people live and where water is a constant, pressing concern.
All right, now let's throw people into the mix. Where does all the fresh water we use actually go? This chart tells a really clear story. We worry about long showers and factories using water, and they do, but look at that blue bar. Agriculture. Growing our food. It's not just the biggest user of water, it's by far the biggest and the fastest growing. It completely dwarfs everything else. So with all that in mind, let's bring the focus back home to Canada. We have this image of ourselves, right? A country of endless lakes and rivers, water-rich. And in a lot of ways it's true, but it creates this strange paradox. Because having a ton of water doesn't mean we don't have some really serious problems.
I mean, just look at the sheer scale of our water wealth on this map. All the water in Canada drains into 5 gigantic basins, flowing out to the Pacific, the Arctic, and the Atlantic. A little bit even makes its way down to the Gulf of Mexico. We are a country that is literally shaped by moving water. It's an absolutely incredible gift. But quantity
isn't the same as quality. And it's definitely not the same as safety. Back in 2000, the town of Walkerton, Ontario, went through an absolute nightmare. The town's drinking water got contaminated with deadly E. coli bacteria from cattle manure that washed into the system. 7 people died, thousands got sick. It was a horrifying wake-up call that even here, in a land of plenty, the systems we rely on to keep us safe can fail.
And for many Indigenous communities, this isn't a shocking, one-time tragedy. It's a crisis they live with every single day. Just try to wrap your head around this. The Neskantaga First Nation has been under a boil water advisory since 1995. That means for decades, they haven't been able to drink the water from their own taps. This is a massive, ongoing failure that shows the deep divide between the water Canada has and who actually gets access to it.
So let's bring it right into our own homes. Where do we use all this water? Well, the answer might actually surprise you. Get this, a massive 65% that showers, baths, and flushing the toilet uses perfectly good, high-quality drinking water. The amount we actually use for cooking and drinking? Only about 10% of the total.
So all of this, the conflicts, the global shortages, the challenges at home, it all leads to these huge questions about the future. In a world that's getting thirstier by the day, what is a water-rich country like Canada supposed to do? And that brings us to one of the biggest debates of all. Should we sell our water? And there are really strong arguments on both sides of this. On one hand, people say, hey, water's a renewable resource. We can sell it, create jobs, and boost our economy. But on the other hand, people worry about losing control of our most essential resource. They point to the environmental damage and argue that, with climate change on the way, that surplus water might be way more valuable to us right here at home in the future.
And when we talk about selling water, the ideas that have been floated are just epic in scale. This map shows a proposal called the Grand Canal Project. The plan was to build a giant dike across James Bay, turning it from saltwater into a massive freshwater lake, and then reroute all that water south to the Great Lakes and even down to the dry parts of the US and Mexico. These mega projects aren't on the table today, but it just shows you the scale of what people have imagined.
And hanging over this whole conversation, of course, is climate change. For Canada, the general prediction is that we're heading for a future of extremes. The places that are already wet are likely going to get wetter, which means more floods. And the places that are already dry, like the prairies, our agricultural heartland, are probably going to get a lot drier.
This right here is the perfect picture of that dual threat. Both of these photos are from Alberta. On one side, you have cattle ranching, an industry totally dependent on water, facing the growing risk of drought. And on the other side, you have these unbelievable, devastating floods. It's a future of either too little water or way, way too much.
So what does all this mean for us, personally, in our day-to-day lives? Well, let me leave you with this number. 343 liters. That is how much water the average Canadian uses just at home every single day. To put that in perspective, it is one of the highest rates of personal water use in the entire developed world.
Which brings us right back where we started, to that big question. We've seen that Canada is blessed with an incredible amount of water, but that wealth isn't shared by everyone. We've seen how having so much can lead us to waste it, and we know the future is bringing some big, big changes. So what do you think? After all of this, is fresh water our most important resource?